Hello, my name is Luis Echeverria from Lancaster, California in the USA. This lesson is for Week 1 for Introduction to Music Production at Coursera.org. I will be teaching about microphones, what they are, the types, the differences in frequency responses between the types, the different polar patterns, and placement. Let's begin. A microphone is a transducer. A transducer is something that converts from one energy type to another without changing the signal. In this case, a microphone is converting between sound pressure variations into voltage variations in the wire. The voltage variations in the wire is also known as audio signal. Now we're going to be looking into two different types of microphones. The first is a dynamic mic, and the second is a condenser mic. I have both of them with me. This is a Shure SM80 dynamic microphone, typically used for vocals. The next I have here is a condenser mic. This is a Samsung CO3 condenser microphone. Now the thing about condenser microphones is that they're very sensitive, so they pick up everything that goes into them. And because they're not battery powered, they do require phantom power. Next we'll be looking at the difference in frequency responses between a dynamic mic and the condenser mic. A dynamic mic has a peak frequency of 5,000 Hz, and it rolls off the bottom end frequency. In other words, typically the frequencies that it does pick up are the ones that do exist within the voice, which is why it's typically good for singers to use in a live setting. With a condenser mic, they have a flat frequency response. They are more transparent and they pick up everything equally. In a live setting, they probably wouldn't. You have to be more careful and not generate feedback, unless you are using this for a drum kit or something. You would typically use this in a recording studio, and it would do fine. Next, we'll be discussing the different polar patterns. The first one we're discussing is cardioid unidirectional. This polar pattern basically picks up everything from the front of it. Dynamic mic is the best example. It is a cardioid, which means it picks up all the sound that comes to the front of it. There are also other variations such as supercardioid and hypercardioid. The main difference is that it picks up some frequencies from other angles. Here too at the bottom, this one is a figure 8, which means that it can pick up sound from the front and the back of the microphone. This is an omnidirectional polar pattern, which means it can pick up everything from everywhere. Condenser mics have both of these settings typically. This one has the figure 8 and the omnidirectional, so it can be used as both, one or the other. And the choice of polar pattern is determined by the element which you are recording and within whatever space you're recording in, whether you are capturing the sound of the space or the sound of the instrument or speaker only. Next, we'll be talking about microphone placement. Now, to figure this out, you'll mainly have to do it just by trial and error. Going into a studio or record wherever you want to record, and trying to see from what angles or what positions microphones will pick up the sound the best, and depending on what equipment you're recording. For example, for a drum kit, you're typically going to use some condenser mics as the overheads because it picks up the sound the best that way. But you also want to see from which angles and which positions and what height will pick up the frequencies the best. And since cymbals have high frequencies, that's also something to consider. And also, if you're micing an amp or a speaker, what part of the speaker are you miking? You're miking the middle of it, and how far or close to the speaker you're recording in. And in the case of condenser mics, because they're unidirectional, or if you want to use figure 8, you might have questions about what direction to face it in. And typically the sound that comes in from where the logo is the front of it. So consider that. And also something about I think I mentioned briefly earlier is that you can use condenser mics as like room mics. So they pick up the reverb in the environment. So that's my lesson on microphones. I hope this was very informative for you, and I hope to hear, and I can't wait to hear some of the feedback so that I can you know so that I know that I've done the best job I can so far. All right, thanks. Bye.